Welcome to the Affiliated Monitors Expert Podcast, hosted by Tom Fox on the Compliance Podcast Network.
Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox, back again with Don Stern, Managing Director of Corporate Monitoring and Consulting Services at Affiliated Monitors. We're in our five-part exploration of the benefits of independent monitoring and proactive assessments for defense attorneys. And today we're going to take up a couple of case studies that Don is familiar with. So first of all, Don, welcome back.
Thanks very much, Tom.
Don, case studies are something that not only lawyers always appreciate, and I say that with my lawyer hat on, but also I think a lot of compliance practitioners really draw lessons learned and really inspiration from companies who have gone through a same or similar circumstance and have come out on the other side. But the steps that someone like yourself has taken as a proactive monitor, and I was wondering if you might, of course, without revealing any confidential information, detail a couple of case studies about how you or your team came in and really helped a defense attorney work through the issues involved.
Well, one example that comes to mind, and this is now probably a year or two old, but it's fresh enough in my mind so that it's useful to talk about as a case study. We were brought in while a company was being investigated by the Department of Justice and EPA in a kind of an oil spill situation, and the company was being investigated because some of its employees had falsified inspection records. And you know, if you're a regulator or a prosecutor who practices in this area, the falsification of inspection records is really a very bad thing because, you know, the government depends upon voluntary compliance in so many areas. So when they see something like that, it's a huge red flag. And so as the lawyers were dealing with the specific, we were brought in to kind of more generally assess the compliance program of the company, not just in this specific geographical area where this happened, but more generally. And the goal was, in part, to identify the problems, fix the problems, but also be in a position to go to the government and say, this was an isolated problem, but you know, we fixed it, and we took a broader look, more responsibly at the company. And that's what happened. And we spent a lot of time talking to employees, not so much, you know, the employees who were involved in the problem, but more generally in terms of the culture of the company, the ethics of the company, the educational program, what kind of whistleblower program they had, how these things were internally investigated. We ended up going and so the company and the lawyers said to us, we're going to be meeting with the disbarment officials at the EPA. We want you to come with us, and we want you to tell them what you found. So we go to Washington, and we sit in a meeting with the various officials at EPA, and we patted the company on the back and said, here are some things that the company has done. But we were very critical in one or two areas. And I remember the look on the face of one of the company lawyers who were there, like, sort of, how could you do this to us, sort of look. And when we left the meeting, the outside lawyer said, that was the best thing that you could have done. And the company said, what do you mean? He said, because it gave credibility to what we've been saying to the government, which is, you know, we take very seriously compliance. We want some independent third party to come in, no holds bars, and tell us how we can fix it and make it better. And that's what these guys did. And sure enough, it made a difference. Now, did that mean that the company didn't have a penalty to pay? Of course they did. But did it end up with a resolution which, at least in the outside lawyer's view, representing the company, was far better than they would have obtained? The short answer is yes, it did. It helped them.
You know, I really want to hone in on that final point, Don, because you previously alluded to the importance of a truly independent coming in for employee morale. But now I want to flip it to the last point that you just raised, which is, once again, having a truly third-party independent come in, but giving credibility in front of the regulators, whether that be EPA, whether that be the Department of Justice, whether it be a state regulator or other. why do you think, and once again, drawing from your experience as a U.S. prosecutor, as a white-collar defense lawyer, why is that third-party independent aspect so important?
Well, I think the government is going to, if it's truly independent, and if it's a group of people in a company that has a track record for doing this, I think it does lend some support. Again, not only that the company has the right instinct and right motivations and right goals, but intends to fix the problem. I mean, the government does care whether this is a rogue company or whether it's a rogue problem. And they don't expect you to assess, if you're a large company, they don't expect you to assess every conceivable possibility, to turn over every possible rock, to interview every employee that might be involved. They want you to take a more risk-based, focused view on where you see the problems. And they know from experience these days that the best way to do that is not by looking to people internally whose livelihood depends upon getting a paycheck every other week or every month from the company, but to people who are outside the company and who are have some measure of independence. Now, having said that, they're not going to necessarily just take somebody like my word for it. They want to know what you did, who you talked to, what metrics you used to reach your conclusions. And so they're going to they're going to take a peek under the hood of what we do too, but they're going to do so with a measure of, I think, respect and deference that they might not afford to somebody internally within the company.
Don, one of my other observations is I've always practiced on the civil side of things. So civil trial lawyer, in-house lawyer, and a corporation, and of course in private practice, once again, civil side focused. But you've sat on the other side. You've been a prosecutor. And one of my thoughts has always been that you need to have at least that sort of, if not mentality, that exposure to how prosecutors might think through an issue. Would that be a fair assessment?
I think it helps. I don't know that it's indispensable, but I think it helps, and I've seen it evolve. I have to say, when I was a federal prosecutor, we talked about compliance. I think we talked a good game, but frankly, I knew very little when I was in that role about how companies actually did compliance and what made a good compliance program versus a paper compliance program. But I think that's shifted. I think that's really dramatically shifted, as whether it's in the FCPA area or in the healthcare fraud area, the government, and I mean government at all levels, not just the federal government, but state government and now increasingly local government, are really asking that question. What makes a good compliance program, and what assurances do we have that if we give you a break in this case, that you're actually going to end up at the end, after all of this is said and done, that you're going to be a good corporate citizen. And they've seen that particularly with repeat offenders, because, if we enter into a deferred prosecution agreement with, let's say, a company, how do we know that it's going to make a difference? And I have to say, having been on both sides, I think it's working that companies are taking compliance programs much, much more seriously, not just in hiring a lot of people to do it, but to sort of drilling down and trying to make a determination. I think with the benefit of third-party independent assessments, that the culture of the company is on the right road. You're never going to cure or prevent all problems. I mean, if you're a major company, it's going to happen. You're going to pick up the New York Times one of these days, and you're going to find that there's a problem. The question is, what have you done in advance of that problem to reduce the risk, and how do you respond once the problem arises? I think those are the key questions.
Don, unfortunately, we are near the end of our time for this episode, but I hope you'll join Don and I for our next episode, where we explore how this works in a healthcare and medical setting. Don, I look forward to continuing the conversation.
Great. Thanks, Tom.
Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox again. I hope you enjoyed this episode of my visit with Don Stearns on the benefits of independent monitoring and proactive assessments for defense attorneys. If you'd like more information on Affiliated Monitors, please check out their website, www.affiliatedmonitors.com. This 5-part podcast series is a special presentation of the Compliance Podcast Network. Thank you again, and I hope you'll join us for another episode.